Have you ever opened your bag to find a tangled mess of cords and cables? Today I'm sharing the perfect do-it-yourself solution to organize all your chargers, earbuds, and cables and give you back some of your sanity. It's a really easy project and it'll take you less than an hour. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, my name is Katie Falinger, and this channel is dedicated to sharing DIY projects that are not just useful, but actually doable, even if you're just a beginner. I think a lot of times do-it-yourself projects can seem really intimidating, and I am here to help you break through that fear and start creating. So if that speaks to you, hit that subscribe button for fresh content every week. Okay, so in my general day-to-day as a YouTuber and a full-time broadcaster, I need to carry a lot of equipment around with me every single day. So my laptop, my phone, that's all portable stuff, but you need chargers for all that stuff too. And then you need two separate kinds of headphones because there's no regular headphone jack in the iPhone anymore. Oh, this drives me crazy. Tell me you can relate to this. Just write earbuds in the comments. So, even with the best cord wrapping technique, and even though I stored all these cables in their very own pouch, I still managed to have a rat's nest every time I would go to reach for one of them. It drove me nuts. But one day inspiration struck and I came up with my own version of a cord keeper that's not just totally functional, but also really pretty too. It's made from metallic faux leather. And the best part, you don't need any special tools or techniques to do this one. Plus, you'll be done in under 60 minutes. Now, full disclosure, I am going to make one cut using my Cricut Maker machine, but you do not have to do this step. I'll explain when we get there. Let's start by going over everything we'll need for this project. And a heads up, I also have a link to all the materials and tools you'll need in the description so you don't have to write this all down. A sheet of leather, or in this case, faux leather, a set of mini anorak snaps, I got a brass color, a mini anorak snap toolkit, a hammer, measuring tape, a pencil in roughly the color of your faux leather material, a utility knife, a tube of liquid stitch, and optional, a piece of fabric that you can fold over a few times, and some cardboard. Now, I mentioned that I used my Cricut Maker on this for just one step, and that was to trim down the overall size, but to also round out these corners. There are leather sheets that you can get that are pre-cut. This one by Real Leather measures in at 9x3. It comes in a bunch of textures and different colors too. However, I wanted my cord keeper to be longer so that I could fit 4 slots in it. I almost got that one by Real Leather, but I ended up going with a leather sheet by Cricut. This measures 12 inches long, so it gave me an extra 3 inches lengthwise. I obviously don't need 12 inches of width, however, that's why I cut it in half. So 2 ways to go here. If you don't have a cutting machine like a Cricut or you just don't want to deal with it, you could freehand cut a larger sheet like this down to what you want, or you could buy a pre-cut piece of leather and then just be content that you might not be able to get more than 2 or 3 slots for your cables in that. I wasn't able to find a sheet bigger than this, so if you have any ideas, let me know in the comments. Okay, let's head over to the Cricut and we'll go into my computer. Now, if you want to skip this part, just jump ahead a couple of minutes to where we get into adding the snaps and the slots. So we're in the Design Space program at design.cricut.com. You'll need a username and a password to access this, but once you're in there, you can start a new project. This is so easy, guys. So first you're going to click on Shapes on the left-hand side and select a square. Along the top menu, click on the gray square and change the color to anything you want. We're only doing this so that we can differentiate between additional shapes that we're eventually going to use. And then also along that top menu under Position, we're going to change the X and Y axis both to 1. Then within that same menu along the top, I'm going to go to Size. I know that I want my cord keeper to be 6 inches wide by 12 inches long. So I need to click the little lock to unlock it, and then I can customize my width and height. So next to W for width, I'll type a 6, and next to H for height, I'll type 12. Awesome. Now I want to round out the one end of my cord keeper. So what I'm essentially doing here is creating a shape with the exact dimensions that I want and then just having the Cricut cut it out for me. I'm going to go back to the shapes layer now on the left-hand column, and this time select a circle. With the circle still selected, I'll change my size to 1 by 1 up at the top. And then again under Position, I'll type in 1 for the x-axis and 1 for the y-axis. I could freehand and drag this up to the corner, but typing it in is of course going to guarantee my placement is 100% accurate. Okay, now I'm going to click Select All up at the top, and then all the way at the bottom right, click Slice. Cool. Now, I need to do the same thing to the opposite corner. So up in Position again, I'll type in 6 for the x-axis and keep 1 for the y-axis. And that lines this up where I need it on the grid. All that middle school algebra starts to come back with this, right? Then I'm going to click and drag out a box to select that top right corner and hit Slice again on the bottom right. And I'm going to leave the other corners alone. Okay. Now I can select just my gray circle and hit Delete. I don't need it anymore. And now over on the right-hand column, we're going to click the little eye icon for both of the circles we just created. That's going to hide them just for now. And now I'm going to go back to the bottom right menu and click Contour. That brings up this Hide Contour window where I can select which pieces I want to slice out. So I'll click both of those triangular corner pieces. You can click the actual shape or just click each piece right out of the column on the right. Then just X out of this window. Now we're going to click the eye icon for each of those circles to unhide them again. And you see how it starts to come together. Okay, just one final step before we can go ahead and cut this. I'm going to once more click Select All up at the top, and then in that bottom right menu once more, I'll click Weld. That tells the Cricut machine that I want one solid piece. If I didn't do that step, it would slice out the 3/4 circles that we use to build those rounded corners, which we do not want. Okay, this looks good. So now I'm going to hit the Make It button up at the top right. And now, even though my leather sheet is 12 inches long, Cricut doesn't like to cut anything longer than 11.5 on the traditional 12 by 12 mat. So that means I need to use a longer mat for this to work, which I have. So I'm going to use a longer 12 by 24 inch blue light grip mat. The machine is going to ask me to select my material, and I'll click on Popular and then select Faux Leather. One super important note on this: I need to place the leather shiny side down to ensure this cuts the material correctly. But because I'm laying it shiny side down, I need to click the mirror tab over here on the left. That will cut out a mirror image so that it cuts the way I designed it. So I'm going to line up my leather exactly along the grid of the mat so that I have a totally straight edge when this cuts. Okay, I don't need any tools in clamp A. I already have my fine point blade loaded in clamp B. Everything is set. And the little arrow is blinking on the machine. So I'll press that button to load the mat. And once that's ready to go, the little C button will blink. I'll press that next and off it goes. This will take all of 5 or so seconds. It's a pretty easy cut for the machine to make. And once it's done, that little arrow button will blink again. I'll press that to unload the mat and then peel the leather off the mat. And voila, I've got perfectly rounded corners. So to reiterate, you can freehand that step yourself. Just go in with a larger piece of leather and freehand it by cutting with a utility knife. Or you can buy a pre-cut piece of leather, but you may have to deal with it being a little bit smaller. It just depends what size you can find pre-cut. But now comes the fun part. It's time to put on our snaps. So let's just look at the pieces that we're working with here. In total, I'm making 2 snaps, and each snap is made up of 4 different pieces. Now, also a quick side note, you can get these snaps in different colors. I really liked the brass. So from my little package of mini anorak snaps, I'm going to pick out 2 of each of these gold pieces that look like M&Ms, 2 of these donut shaped pieces, 2 that look like mini microphone stands, and 2 that resemble little sink strainers. And for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm going to refer to these just like that throughout. So it's M&Ms, donuts, mini mic stands, and sink strainers. Listen, sometimes it's the most bizarre teaching techniques that are easiest to understand. Now, before we can attach anything, we need to punch holes where we want to put the snaps. I'm going to start on the end with the rounded corners. So let's pick out the tools we need from the Mini Anorak toolkit. I'll need one of these 2 plastic parts. So this was attached together, but it actually broke as I was trying to figure out how it worked. That's totally fine though, because it doesn't need to be attached to do the job. And initially, I'm only going to need one of these. I'll also need the black round chip and the cylindrical bar. And before I start punching any holes, I want to figure out exactly where I want to put the snaps. So I know I have 6 inches to work with, and using my measuring tape, I'll line up a straight line across and make a dot with my pencil where I'm going to punch out the holes. I'm going to put a snap 1.5 inches from the edge on both sides. I want these snaps pretty close to the edge, but I do need to attach them far enough into the fabric to make sure that they don't run over the edge. So my marks are tough to see on camera here, but it is just enough that I can make them out in person. Okay, now I'll grab the fabric and place it underneath the leather. So I'm using this really just to pad up the surface of my work table so that I don't risk leaving any hammer marks behind. Now I'll take the black disc and put it directly under one of the dots I just marked. Then I'm going to push the little bar into the flat side of the plastic holder with the tapered end of the bar going down first. I'll center the bar over the first dot I drew, hold it securely with one hand, and give the top of the bar a couple of whacks with the hammer. And there's my first hole. So same thing on the other dot we drew. Place the disc under the dot, center the metal bar right over the dot, and hammer a few times to punch out a hole. Now I can push the metal bar out of the plastic holder and put it to the side. We'll be needing it again. So I'm going to need both plastic pieces this time, and I'll pick up the silver piece that looks kind of like a saucer. So I'm going to push the end into one of the plastic holders. Next, I'll take this metal piece that sort of looks like a circle with a bar through it, and again, I'll fit that smooth end into the other plastic holder. So this is what it should look like once you've connected the tool pieces correctly. Okay, we're going to use these 2 pieces, one of the M&Ms and one of the donuts. Take the M&M, turn it over, and place it in the saucer. Then I'll take my donut, turn that over, and snap it into the other tool, the circle with the bar through it. We're going to attach these 2 pieces. Now, I know that I want the M&M on the shiny side of the leather. So with the shiny side of the leather facing down, I'll poke the M&M under the leather and through one of the holes I punched out. Then I'll flip the donut piece on top. Gotta make sure I have some padding underneath. And holding that top plastic piece firmly, I'll give it a few hits with the hammer, and this is what comes out. That should look pretty familiar. And we'll repeat that same process for the second hole we punched. Okay, so I want to be able to roll this cable organizer when it's complete, so I'm going to attach the rest of my snaps a few inches in from the opposite end. And to figure out where that should be, I'll eyeball it and sort of test out where I think I want that snap to be. Then, holding that spot with my finger, I'll grab my measuring tape, and it looks like I'll want those snaps to be 2.5 inches in from the edge. So I'll measure that out, lining it up with the snaps I've already attached, and I'll mark my dots just like I did on the other end. And also, like I did on the other end, I'm going to punch out 2 holes. So I've reattached my metal bar into the plastic holder. Again, I'll layer some padding underneath, place my black discs directly under one of the dots I marked, and then press the tapered end of the metal bar on the dot. Holding that firmly, I'll hit it with the hammer a few times. Now this step can be confusing, and it really helps to visualize how you're going to use what you're making. So when I eventually roll up this cord keeper, I'll need the little sink strainer facing out on the shiny side of the leather. So I know that piece has to attach to that side. So here's how we do that. First, we'll get our tool ready. I've removed the metal bar that I used to punch those holes, and we've only got 2 attachments left. One is this one. It's got a ring of flexible plastic on the rim, so push that into one of the plastic holders, and then I'll take the only attachment we haven't used, and it's basically a mold of the sink strainer piece, and push that into the other plastic holder. Now, back to the tool with the plastic rim. We're going to take one of our mini mic stands, and you'll wedge that into the flexible plastic. Make sure you hear it pop into place. And that needs to be completely secure. And then you take one of your sink strainers, turn it over with the strainer facing down, and fit that into the other tool. It really just lays right in. Once more, slide your fabric under the leather to save your tabletop if you're worried about getting it banged up. Now, make sure your leather is shiny side up this time. You're going to poke the mini mic stand under the leather and through one of these holes. Then take the sink strainer and hold it together with your forefinger and thumb, Then flip that over onto the mic stand. Hold it securely with one hand and hammer that in with the other. Then you can remove your tools and you'll have this left behind. Same process on the final hole. Attach the mic stand to the flexible plastic tool, poke the end through the punched hole, place the sink strainer onto its mold and flip that on top of the other snap and hammer it all together. And this is what you should have once all the snaps are attached. You see the way I placed them? I'm able to roll it up. So now I'll make the slots to hold my cords and cables, and I need to figure out where I want to cut those. So I already know that I want 4 slots to hold 4 different cables. I'm going to make 3 of them 1.5 inches wide and 1 that's 2 inches wide. So measuring from just past that first snap, I'll mark the spot with my finger, and then I'll turn the measuring tape perpendicular to that spot. So I'm going to mark a dot about 2.5 inches up from the bottom. That's where I'll start my first row of slots. Then turn the measuring tape lengthwise again, and now we can mark 7 additional dots across. So it's a total of 8 dots to denote 4 separate lines I'm going to cut. So I'll measure 1.5 inches from dot number 1 and mark another dot. Then measure 1 inch and mark a dot. I'll do that exact same series 3 more times. And the last dot I measure will be for the widest cable slot. So make this one 2 inches across. So let's just take a quick sidestep here and show you where we're going with this. So you just made 8 dots. Those represent one line of 4 separate slots that we're eventually going to cut. So dot number 1 was here, dot number 2 was here, dot 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. You good so far? Let me know in the comments. Now just flip the leather around and we'll line up the second set of dots in the exact same sequence, 1 inch below that first line. So I'll end up with 16 dots total. They're very tough to see on camera since I used a similar colored pencil, but you'll be able to see yours when you have it right in front of you. Now I'm going to connect my dots to form 8 separate lines, and these are what I'm going to be cutting to create the slots for my cables and cords. So I'm using the edge of the Snap Toolkit packaging just as a guide here, and I'm going to draw a line from dots 1 to 2, from dots 3 to 4, 5 to 6, and 7 to 8 on both the top and bottom sets of dots. It's a lot easier to see this on camera, and there you see 4 sets of separated lines. Okay, it's time to cut. So I'm laying down my cardboard to protect my table underneath, and using the utility knife, I'll carefully slice right along each of the lines I drew. This leather is pretty thin, so this tool is working really well. And just one last step. I want to fold over about 1/2 inch of the very end of my cord keeper to give it a more finished professional look. So I'm going to take my liquid stitch, shake it up really well first, and then lay down a thin layer of it right where I'm going to fold over that edge. Line up the corners and press down firmly. Now you can see I have some of that glue squeezing out. I'll just wipe it away. I have noticed that this grips onto fabric really quickly, which is awesome. So it's only a couple of seconds before you can actually just let it sit and totally dry. But it does take a full ½ hour to totally set, which is actually pretty quick. And this is ready to use. So I'm wrapping my phone charger, my earbuds, my other earbuds with the regular jack, and my computer cable. And I'm reserving the biggest slot for that one. And look how great this organizes everything. I feel like this is going to be such an awesome little life hack for me and hopefully for you. So let me know if you're going to give this project a try. And just one final question for you. What is your biggest organizational dilemma? Is it how to organize your workspace, or maybe how to organize your craft room if you're lucky enough to have one, maybe your kids' toys? Let me know in the comments below, and a solution to your organizational struggle may just show up in a future video. If you liked this video, I'd love it if you clicked that thumbs up, share it with your fellow makers, and then of course subscribe and hit that little notification bell so that you can be alerted when I post a new video. But you will find new content here every every single Thursday. And next week, I'm going to show you from start to finish how to make a wood farmhouse style sign. We are going to be making the frame and everything, so you don't want to miss that. And I will watch for you over on my social channels as well. Come chat with me over there in between uploads anytime. I will put all of the links of where you can find me in the description below as well. So thanks for watching, have fun crafting, and I'll see you next Thursday. I don't think I have that many outtakes this time. Oh, I'm sweating through this shirt. Is that a problem? Today I'm sharing the perfect do-it-yourself solution DIY projects that are not just excuse me. Click that subscribe button. And even though I had excuse me again. I didn't even have lunch. Why am I oh no, I left that on. Shoot. So again, bleh. Sometimes it's the most bizarre teaching techniques that are the sometimes it's the most bizarre teaching techniques that are the, why can't I say that? That is a wrap.